Record. Okay. Hi everybody. Good evening. I'm Aishwarya from Coach to Transformation, and this is one of our webinars, which is very simply we call it CCEU webinar, but I think we should rename it now. But anyway, we have today our dear Kaveh Mir. He has been our speaker. He has been our participant. He's our ACTC learner and a credentialed coach. I have a small brief about him, and then we will start after that. Okay. So Kaveh comes with an ICF PCC, ICF ACTC, ICF MCC. He has 2,200 plus hours of executive coaching. He helps senior leaders enhance performance, team development, engagement through positive behavior change, positive psychology, and coaching psychology. His approach combines psychological and coaching experience with business insights, built on 15 to 25 years of experience. Um, Including founding a tech startup and leading a management buyout from 3i. I'm I'm so sorry if I'm missing something, Kaveh. He's also an MBA and an MCC, works with leaders on psychological processes such as motivation, emotion, perception, using a methodology rooted in humanistic psychology. And today, he's here with us to explain us the new ICF Code of Ethics. And he's also part of ICF Board Member. Welcome, Kaveh, and over
Thank
to
you
you.
very much for that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Great to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. And I thought before we do anything, we'll start with a little quiz, little game. So if you're willing to play a game so that we make it a bit more exciting, we'll go from there. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can find my screen. Screen number 3. Okay. So I invite you to scan in the barcode, and as you do, then you can on your phone interact with me and play the game. So basically, we're going to run through a quiz on ICF 2025 ethics, and basically you're going to have a series of questions shown to you with possible answers. You select the answer that you think represents the best the correct answer in your opinion. By the way, it's just a game, so don't take it too seriously. No stress, nothing like that. So that we can actually see how much we know, and hence we can then connect the presentation to your existing knowledge. That is the intention. Now, one other thing about the playing the game is it is also time bounded. So whoever pressed the answer, provided the answer is correct, they get more points. So there's also a response time. If you can click on it faster, you get higher marks going forward. So can I assume everyone has a scan and everyone can see my screen on the device? Is that a reasonable assumption? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So let's play. Here we go. So I'm going to move through the screens and then we'll see how I go. So here is the question, and I'm going to show it in this way. So your time starts now. You don't even know the answer, just guess, because that tells you what we're going to cover. Remember, whoever presses first, because of the time, you get more scores. Okay, so the correct answer was section 5, and we've got 15% correct response, and this is our leading board. Sobha is leading on the very first question. Here we go, next one. In your opinion, how many sections are in 2025 ICF ethics? Okay. So 60% correct answer. 5 is the correct answer. The leading board changed now. We have someone else that's leading. Let's go through number 3. Select the statement that are correct. Here we go. And as you can see, these are some of the topics that we'll be covering in the follow-up presentation. So here we go. Correct answers are number 1 and 3. The leading board stands like this. Sangeeta, you're leading now. Here we go. Next one. Select the statements are correct again. Ready? Here are the answers. 80%. Congratulations. The leading board now looks like this. Still the same leader is leading the board. I don't know whether I can promise this or not, but I don't know. Somehow I think the first 3 winners would receive something. Sorry, guys, I'm putting you on the spot. So let's play. Which ICF core emphasizes the commitment to being human and respectful? Here we go, and here are the answers. Select the ones that you think is the correct answer. Of course, these are the values by ICF. Here we go. Humanity. The leading board. Oh, it's shifting. It's shifting. Here we go. Next one. Here are the standards. Of course, you probably haven't seen, I don't know if some of you have already seen the ICF Code of Ethics 2025. If not, well, just guess. Here we go. 3.7 is the correct answer. The leading board stands like this at the moment. Here we go. Next one. So, which of the standards do you believe applies to technology? As you can see, there's something about technology in the new Code of Ethics. And if you don't know, you can just select it. There's a bit of a lock here as well. And the correct answer is 2.5. And the board stands like this at the moment. So, what is the main change in number of standards from 2020 to 2025 ICF Code of Ethics? Here are the answers. Select the one that you think is the correct answer. correct answer is less than 2020. The codes are less than 2020 codes. Here's the leading board. The next one is about confidentiality and legal compliance. What section covers that? And the correct answer is section 2. Here we go, next one. Well, actually, the board stands like this. Next one. Of course, we are trying just to get you also familiar with some of the things we're going to share in a minute. Here we go. 50% got the correct answer. And the board stands like this. We've got a couple of more, and then we'll start going through this in more detail. So, which of the ICF core values represents commitment to developing social connection and community building? As you can see, Code of Ethics in 2025 heavily works around the ICF core values. So being familiar with ICF core values would help us to understand the Code of Ethics better. Okay, 7% got it right. The board stands like this. Select the statements that are correct. %71% got the correct answer. Board stands like this. I think we are approaching, if not already, the final question. So here's a chance just to catch up. The very last question. Let's see if we can change the board. Here we go. And the correct answer, well done, 100% got this one right. So with that in mind, are you ready to see the leading board? Here we go. Play the drums. Who's playing the drums? 1, 2, 3. Here's the board. So I am assuming that you're going to take a screenshot of this and you will be getting in touch with the relevant parties and share with them what is the price that they would get from this playing this quiz. So thank you for playing. I thought we start with something a bit more different than you interact. The idea was that you get familiarize yourself with some of the concept and possibly what sort of things in ICF 2005 you might see differently. So Let me go to my presentation. Give me a second. If I'm looking around, I've got different screens in here, but my full attention is always towards you. So let me just go here and switch my screens around so I can then see my screen. There we go. If I move this here. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now, screen number 2. Here we go. I'm assuming you can see my screen that says ICF Code of Ethics. Is that yes?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, here we go. So what we're going to do is the reason that we've got, there are many reasons that Code of Ethics was changed, but one of the reasons is that in 2020, the ICF family organization were not established as they are. And hence the Code of Ethics was mainly written for professional coaches. Now, the big difference is that in 2020, when the name changed from International Coach Federation to International Coaching Federation, the Code of Ethics has to be reviewed so that it applies to all family organizations and not just the coaches or members that belong to professional coaches. So that was one of the reasons. So the Code of Ethics basically is used and is applicable for whoever that represents themselves belonging to the ICF ecosystem. So before it was whoever was member, whereas now is whoever belongs to all the 6 family organizations. And also it applies to people working for ICF and also board of directors. So it applies to a wider ecosystem than just professional coaches. So these are some of the reasons that the code needed to be reviewed. The Code of ICF Ethics believes that we need to work towards ethical maturity, and it believes that most of us, all of us, during our journey in coaching, we will come across scenarios where we need to make difficult decisions. And we need to be very courageous because the decisions are very difficult. And I suppose sometimes not quite clear in terms of what is the right decision. And when that happens, ICF believes that we need to look at our compass and see where do good principle is pointing. And based on the direction of our compass, which is pointing towards do good principle, we then hopefully will be much more equipped to make that difficult decision that still requires a lot of being very courageous to make that difficult decision. So the very first thing we have to acknowledge is during the coaching journey, there are going to be decisions that are quite tough and require a lot of courage for us to make them. And I suppose the Code of Ethics is trying to help us. How do we navigate these difficult decisions? I suppose a very important thing before even making a decision is we need to make sure our antenna, the ethical antenna, is working. Because if we are working as coaches, we might not even recognize there are ethical dilemmas that we are facing because of biases that we've got. And at the end of the day, we're all human, and I suppose, we all have biases. So ethical maturity starts by creating stronger antenna to seeing where are the ethical dilemmas and hence be able to treat them using the ethical code of ethics. Now, I'm not going to say which frameworks you would use. I thought I'd just share a couple of frameworks. So for example, Passmore, Professor Passmore has a framework for making sense out of ethical dilemmas. In his framework, which you can probably search and find it, and I think in one of his book, Coaching Handbook, this is explained in detail. He believes that in order for us to navigate ethical dilemmas, we need to go through 6 stages. They are not necessarily sequential, meaning we can go from 1 to 2, back to 1, 1, 2, 3, back to 2, back to 1, and so forth. And the diagram explains how one could navigate ethical dilemmas. For me, when I see this diagram, immediately, what I take away from it is that ethical dilemmas are very complex. and hence they require quite a bit of attention, and they address our blind spots. So this framework is by Pasmore, David Clutterbuck. He's got his own frameworks, still got 6 stages. And he also believes that, for us to navigate ethical dilemmas, we need to have a framework to help us reflect on what we're doing to ensure our blind spots are not interfering with our decision making. So the code of ethics is almost like the rails on the side of the road that tries to help us if our decisions is going off-road. And if it's going to off-road, what do we need to do? So ICF believes that ethical dilemma requires ethics education and training for ICF credential holders, meaning that this is a very important part of the training, and hence also ICF accredited programs need to pay attention to teaching, to developing, to practicing, to reflecting on ethical dilemmas when the cohorts are going through their coaching journey. So, in 2025, ethics, they are heavily linked to ICF core values. In other words, another way of understanding what is this ethical codes is by saying ICF adhere to certain codes of the values. And the ethics are showing us how we can behave these values and what are the dilemmas that we might have to face when we want to adhere to the core values of ICF. So I'm just going to display them. The very first one is professionalism, which is combination of responsibility, respect, integrity, competence, and excellence. The next value is about collaboration, which is really about social connection and community. The third value of ICF is about humane, kind, compassionate, and respectful. And last but not least, the fourth value of ICF is about equity, which is really about the coaching mindset, is trying to make sure we understand needs of others so we can practice in an equitable processes where we create equality for all. So ICF is living or is doing its best to live by these values, and the code of ethics have been driven from these values to tell us how do we deal with respect? What are the dilemmas when it comes to compassionate approach? What are the challenges with having an equitable processes in our coaching? What are our responsibilities? What does respect and integrity means in coaching? And that's how the code of ethics have been developed. So, and of course, the code of ethics applies to the whole ecosystem and not just the coaches as it used to be before. So I'm going to share with you first structure of the existing code of ethics. For some of you that are familiar with the code of ethics, the existing code of ethics is made of the following sections. And the sections are named according to responsibilities that we have to clients, which are 13 codes under it. Responsibilities towards practice and performance, which has 5 codes below it. Responsibilities to professionalism, which has 4 codes under it. And section 4, responsibility to wider society, which currently has 3 codes under it. So this is the current structure of code of ethics, divided by the stakeholders where the dilemmas might show up, and then the code of ethics tries to explain what is our responsibility towards each of these stakeholders, the clients, the practice, the whole professionalism of coaching, and also to the wider society. The new code is structured slightly differently. So the names have changed. The section 1 is called Agreements for Client and Sponsor Engagement, which has 2 codes. Section 2 is about confidentiality and legal compliance, which has 7 codes. And section 3 is about professional conduct and conflict of interest, which has 8 codes. Commitment to delivering consistent values, which has 3 codes. Last but not least, section 5 is about professional integrity and accountability, which has 3 points. So one thing that you can notice, the codes are categorized slightly differently. In the existing code of ethics, they are categorized by stakeholders. Here, they are categorized by the type of dilemmas that we might come across. And the dilemmas being about agreement with clients and multi-stakeholder engagement, confidentiality and legal compliance. How do we manage the two? Professional conduct and conflict of interest, commitment to delivering consistent value, and last but not least, how can we manage the tension between professional integrity and accountability? So we're going to walk through the codes, and I'm going to share with you some of the differences that you might expect in the common code of ethics. So old code 2020, 4 sections: responsibility, clients, practice, professionalism, and society. The new code is about, the sections are a slightly different group. It's about agreement and engagement, confidentiality and legal compliance. And you can see in each section the tension between how do I adhere to confidentiality and manage the tension of legal compliance, because the two would create tension where that difficult decision might come out, and then we have to decide which way and how do we balance it. So the tension in section 3 tries to look at professional conduct and conflict of interest. Section 4 is trying to see how we would manage the tension in delivering consistent values across all our clients. And last but not least, how do we manage the tension between dilemmas that come alive between integrity and accountability? So, if I want to just give you a summary of changes, you notice that the codes are numbered differently. In the previous section, they were numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till 28. The new codes, you will see the section number appears with the second number that represents the code. So for example, you have 1.2, 1.1, 1.2. In the old system, they were numbered 1, 2, 3. So 3, for example, is 2.1. So the numbering system is also changed. There are less number of codes, 24 compared to 28 in version 2025. And the codes basically were combined together for greater clarity and understanding. Now, I'm just sharing with you my opinion. In my opinion, there are possibly 2 new codes that possibly they were not direct correlation to the old one, code 2.5 and 3.7. And in my opinion, 2.5 is trying to address, or at least bring to our attention, that the new technology, for example, working for platforms, could have its own ethical dilemmas that we need to pay attention to. So I am going to walk through the codes and tell you where the new ones are and how do they compare to the old code of ethics. Section 1, agreement for clients and or sponsor engagement. So code 1.1, it's combination of old standard code 1 and 2, which were parts of section 1 of responsibility to the clients. Now, what I have done, just so I can understand the code of ethics, I've went through the competencies and I said, which competencies talk about what do we need to do to pay attention to this code? And what I'm sharing with you, I'm not saying these are the only competencies. These are the competencies that, in my opinion, will talk about this code of ethics. So for example, the first one, which is really about how do we manage sponsors, stakeholders, and the relationship, how do we explain the nature of coaching and so forth. You would notice that competency 1.5, 1.6, 3, 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that would be talking about this code of ethics. Agreeing for clients and a sponsor agreement has two codes, 1.1 and 1.2. 1.2 is mainly about respecting all parties' rights to terminate. So this is very similar to code number 9, which was responsibility to clients. And you can see how this new categorization is linked to other codes belonging to other sections in the previous codes, or at least in the 2020 code. So 1.2 belongs to section 1, responsibility to clients, standard 9, and 1.1 links to old standard 1 and 2, again, responsibility to clients. So, in my opinion, 1.2 also is linked somehow to competency 3.11, where we have to honor the experience of coaching when the clients wants to terminate the sessions. Remember, the termination could happen for a variety of reasons. One, it could be the end of engagement, and or maybe even before end of the engagement, where the clients or the coach would identify the value is not being received from coaching. And the Code of Ethics, it just says that we need to pay attention to that. Either we notice or we feel value is not being delivered, or the client believes or notices that there is no value in continuing with coaching. So, confidentiality and legal compliance, I think this is one of the sections that has got more codes than the first one. So the codes here is about confidentiality of all parties involved. So standard 2.1 is similar to standard 3 in the existing 2020 code. And in my opinion, competency 1.5 and 3.3 is linked to this code of ethics. Have a clear agreement about information and how information is exchanged amongst all parties involved in coaching agreement. So 2.2 is similar to the old code of ethics number 4, again, responsibility to clients. And in my opinion, competency 3.2 and 3.3 touches on that. Code 2.3, it's really about what are the clear agreements about confidentiality and where would confidentiality could be broken. This is very similar to the old standard 5, responsibility to clients. And in my opinion, competency 1.6 and 3.3 talks about this in the competency document. So 2.4, it's really about how do we store, dispose records so that we adhere to confidentiality, to security, to privacy, and compliance with all the laws of the agreement. This one is linked to standard 7, again, responsibility to clients, and competency 1.5, 3.3. So this is about fulfilling the ethical and legal obligation to a public at large, directly and through any technology system you might utilize. So this is the new standard. So there was no kind of a direct connection between this and any of the previous codes. And you can see that this is trying to pay attention to technology systems that you might utilize, meaning that depending on what technology you use, you need to make sure that you fulfill your ethical and legal obligation to the client, to the sponsor, to the colleagues, and to the public at large as well. So this is 2.6. It's very similar to code standard 15, which was responsible to practice and performance, which in my opinion is also addressed in competency 1.4. 2.7, maintain privacy of ICF professionals and use of contact information. And this is basically if you have access to ICF portal, you respect the confidentiality of the emails of all the other parties on the side, and you not abuse that rights to share or use it without having agreement from the parties. This was covered in Standard 19, Responsible to Practice and Performance, and Competency 1 and 4, 1.1 and 1.4 talks about this. So 2.8 talks about copyright laws and recognizing and making sure that when you contribute, when you are using something, you honor the contribution and intellectual property of the others. And this was addressed in Standard 26, Responsibility to Society, which in my opinion is covered in Competency 1.2 and 1.4. So that is what Section 2 is covering, which is really about confidentiality and legal compliance. Section 3 talks about conduct and conflict of interest. So 3.1 tries to bring our attention to scenarios where we have multi-agreements with multi-stakeholders. This standard is very similar to Standard 10 in the existing 2020 Code of Ethics. And in my opinion, this is addressed also in Competency 3.2. So this is about how do we manage conflicts. What are recommended way to manage conflicts once we notice there is one. This one is very similar to the old Standard 6, which was part of responsibility to clients. And competencies about managing conflicts, in my opinion, address across a number of competencies. 2.3, 2.8, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6. So Code 3.3, it's really about resolving conflict of interest and potential conflict of interest by seeking professional assistance or suspending or ending the professional relationship. So if we notice that we cannot resolve. So number one was, do we detect it? How do we do to detect it? What are the rules we can put? Number two, 3.2 was, how do we try to address it? Number three is saying, well, look, if you cannot address the conflict, you have to ensure that you have the right procedures for seeking professional assistance and or suspending the relationship because the conflict is not resolved. And of course here, seeking professional assistance, an example of that might be access to supervision and also ICF committee, where you can go there for further help, clarification, and support. So this standard is similar to Standard 18 in the in the existing 2020, Responsibility to Practice and Performance. And in my opinion, Competency 3.3 and 3.11 addresses that. So 3.4 is trying to bring this to our attention that we also have responsibility about appropriateness and culturally sensitive boundaries. So that requires quite a bit of self-reflection on ourselves to ensure that where might be blind spots that we are not noticing because of cultural sensitivity of clients that we're working with, particularly if you're working across different geographical boundary. I think 3.4 is very, very important. This is standard 3.4. It's similar to Standard 23, which was responsibility to professionalism. In my opinion, Competency 3.2 tries to address this and tries to bring this to our attention that during the agreement, we need to pay attention to this to hopefully have procedures, clarity, and agreement on how we deal with things should they come up. 3.5 is about fairness. It's about biases. It's about ensuring that we are aware of the biases that we might have because of race, color, gender, identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, spiritual practices, abilities, and all sorts of other parts and categories that would impact us. So 3.5, it's really about what are your procedures to ensure that you are working on your biases to ensure you provide a fair coaching service to your clients, considering all possible blind spots that we might have with respect to a variety of different discrimination dimensions, as is shown in here. So this one, it's very similar to all the standard 25, which was responsibility to society. And in my opinion, when we pay attention to competency 1.2, 1.3, 2.3, and 2.6, we have ability to reduce the chance of ethical dilemmas in here. And I think if I'm not wrong, 2.3, it's where you engage in reflective practice and you reflect on yourself through the mentoring and supervision to ensure that we bring to our awareness any of the biases that we might have with reference to any of these dimensions. So 3.6 is telling us about a conflict that might arise because of emotional responses that possibly could be created within us. It talks about being mindful of the level of intimacy in coaching relationships. An example of that is, participation in any sexual or romantic relationship with clients or sponsors, and detect a shift in relationship. And if we notice that, we take the appropriate action to address the issue. And if the issue cannot be addressed, consider canceling the coaching engagement. Notice the code 3.6 is also telling us that we constantly need to work with our supervisors to bring to our awareness any emotional responses that we might feel as human. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but we are all human and we all have all of these biases and responses to a variety of circumstances. This is linked to standard 24, which was part of responsibility to professionalism in the 2020 Code of Ethics. So competency 2.6 and 3.11 addresses this code 3.6. So a couple of more on section 3. So 3.7 talks about the conflicts or the conflict of interest that might come up because we could be playing multiple professional roles. Now, in my opinion, this could happen in all three modalities, but there is more chance of this happening when we are using coaching as part of leadership and management. I think this could happen quite a lot more if we are internal coaches. And of course, it could also happen when we are external coaches. But it's almost like when you're an internal coach, this is very important because you have different roles within an organization and the whole power dynamics needs to be regulated. When you are coaching as a leader and manager, this also needs to be taken into consideration because by default, you are playing multiple roles. And coaching is not the only role that you play for your clients. So this one is a brand new standard, in my opinion, and competency 1.6 and 1.7 is trying to address where our development can be focused to ensure that we build ethical maturity around code 3.7. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is about conflicts of disclosure. So this is being transparent and hold up to being authentic and integrity, and disclose any benefits being paid or received based on any other activities that the clients and all other stakeholders are required to be privileged to. And this one, I think, is in, yes, standard 12 in the 2020 code, which was part of section 1, responsibility to clients. So you can see how the new section also pulls different of the standards from old one into new categorization, whereas the 2020 was mainly driven by responsibility to the client, to the professionalism, to the whole society. It was more grouped like that. This is more grouped by dilemma types that we might be facing. So section 3, conduct, professional conduct and conflict of interest. So this one, in my opinion, is addressed in competency 1.1. And now we are going to section 4, commitment to delivering consistent value. So this is linked to the value of ICF, which is about equality and ensuring that we provide consistent service across our portfolio, regardless of who we are serving. So the code of ethics in here are 4.1. So 4.1 is trying to bring to our attention the power of a status, which might differentiate us by cultural, relational, psychological, contextual issue. An example of that might be, regardless of the client that we are serving, if we are serving someone that is not paying, your typical rate, or someone in the lower in our perception, lower status power, we still ensure that the quality of the coaching is not dependent on the client. The quality of the coaching stays the same regardless of who we're coaching. We are not coaching, with a lot more effort and focus if we are coaching, as an example, high-paid client compared to low-paid clients. I suppose this is trying to bring this to our attention, that we need to ensure that the quality of the service that we provide, whether it's pro bono or whether for any exchange of money, always tries to stay the same across all the portfolio that we serve. So this one would be very similar to section 1, responsibility to clients. And the competencies in here is 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. So recognize my personal limitation and circumstances that impair my coaching performance and professional commitment. So this requires quite a bit of a self-reflection, in my opinion, to ensure that we are aware of our strength and possible developmental areas where we need to stretch, and be courageous that if we notice that we have limitation, we'll seek support to overcome the limitation, which is easy to say, but it requires a very deep reflection for a coach to kind of admit I have limitation. And hence, these are again where supervision, in my opinion, is very, very important. So this standard is similar to standard 17, responsibility to practice and performance, and competency 2.2, 2.3, and 2.8 talks about that. So 4.3 is trying to say that it's our responsibility to partner with our clients and notice if there is a shift in the value received from the coaching relationship, and discuss with the clients. In other words, not only the clients has the right to bring to our attention if they notice there is a shift in the value received, it's also our duty as coaches to notice that and partner with the client to see how best we could deal with that. If we notice, for example, coaching is not really bringing any value to the client. Remember, all of this has to happen in partnership rather than we just tell the clients, we share with them what we are noticing. But I suppose this code of ethics is reminding us that it's our duty also to bring to our attention to our clients if we believe what's happening in here is not creating any value. So this one is all standard 8, which is about responsibility to the client, and competency 3.2 and 3.11 would address this. So I'm just going to go through the last one. I'm noticing someone is drawing on my slides. Enjoy your drawing. So section 5 is about professional integrity and accountability. So in here we have a smaller number of quotes. So this is basically saying that it's our responsibility to ensure we accurately identify coaching qualifications and our credentialing, certification, and the courses that we've done with the clients to ensure that we are representing a true reflection of who we are. This was addressed in the old standard 20, which was responsibility to being responsibility to professionalism. And in my opinion, this is about competency 1.1, which is talking about integrity and ensuring that we hold up in who we are, and we are honest and integral in our behaviors in coaching. So here again is about not only to identify, but also when we create a written statement or a verbal statement, we make sure that our statements are true and accurate about what we offer. So this is really about how do we put ourselves out there to our clients, and how do we make sure that verbally or even in written format, what we say is true and accurate. So there is less chance for ambiguity in terms of what we are offering and what we are not offering. And that is covered by Code of Ethics 5.2. This is very similar to all the standard 21, which is a responsibility to professionalism. And in my opinion, again, this is addressed by competency 1.1. Now, Code 3. What Code 3 is saying is saying that the North Compass for us is doing good and not just avoiding bad. So I suppose this is more like a positive way of looking at things, and we need to recognize that in whatever we do with in our professional conduct with clients, stakeholders, coaching profession and society, we forever looking for doing good, and it's not just to say that I did something avoiding bad. So it's kind of a shifting to the positive improvement in whatever we do, and not just try to convince ourselves, oh, this is not bad, this is not causing any problem. The question is this doing any good? Which is a very different way of looking at ethical dilemmas. Avoiding bad could convince us to make decisions very differently than if we put the criteria of doing good in deciding what needs to happen and what we should do or not. And Code 5.3 is trying to bring that to our attention. So this one is probably very similar to all the standards 28, the last code of the 2021, which is responsibility to society. And in my opinion, this is also competency 1.1. So let me just stop my screen. My apologies. I don't enjoy, let me just share my screen here. I don't enjoy going through the list of things because it's almost like I'm reading it, but there's no other way for me to present this to you apart from just tell you what it is and what's going to be, so you can see the differences between it. So I am assuming we've got few minutes for question and answer. Is that right? Am I right on the timing? So again, my apologies for the listing and the slides after slides. That's the only way I could do it. So if there are anything that we need to have a conversation about, I'm more than happy to try to have a conversation with someone.
This was good, Kaveh. Thanks for the rundown through the each and every detailed points. I think we do have a very few minutes for question answers. So let's check in.
Guys, please come on camera, unmute yourselves, whatever works for you. Come ask a question because we have very few minutes left.
One of the thoughts that came up, Kaveh, was the way it is now structured and how it addresses, like you mentioned, the 5 sections in terms of even the last part of integrity, accountability, or where it can be applicable for everybody and not just coaches. So I think those were some of the key highlights.
Yeah, I think the categorization is very different now. Before it was driven by the type of stakeholders, our responsibility to clients, to practice, and now the new categorization, I think, is trying to address the nature of the dilemma that the codes are trying to address. Is the dilemma to do with conflict? Is the dilemma to do with conduct or professionalism and so forth? So I think the new category, in my opinion, it's better because it would help us to navigate the code easier.
Sangeeta?
A quick question. Sounds very basic, but is this already applicable or is it at a later date? Because when you go to the ICF website, the code of conduct is still the old one. You have to really go search for the new to find this one.
So I'm just sharing with you my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. I think if not tomorrow or next few days, you will start seeing this coming alive. So this is probably hot from the oven, as they say.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Coach to Transformation is the first one to bring it to you, Sangeeta. So
Yeah.
no, I think Kaveh is right. Of course, he is, and it's. I think tomorrow onwards they would release it, and then there is a Code of Ethics course that is available on Coach Federation, but that's going to come up at a later date. I think sometime in June. As of now, it will still reflect the previous course. Yeah.
Okay. So, any more questions? We're on time.
Yeah, I have a question. Jolly here.
Yes, Jolly.
See, I was looking forward to a source where I can get sample situations of ethical this thing, and which I can then choose which is the best option, and I also get a response whether I've chosen the right ethical standard or option to deal with that situation. I was not able to get any solid link or any source for that.
There are, so currently, if you navigate through the ICF website, there is a section, which I don't have the link like immediately on my thing, but I'm sure you can find it, that ICF shares cases and example. But notice the way ICF then explain the cases is using the old ethical codes. Because the new code has come out, that document is probably not representing a new coding system. So there is and I don't remember exactly where it is. I don't want to start chasing just in case we run out of time. I'm sure you can find it there. There is a part on the section where you have examples. Yeah. And under each case, it explains the dilemma, and it explains one way that you can think about the dilemma using a code of ethics. But the code of ethics is the old code of ethics. So then maybe you can use this one to say, if it was 21, which one is the new one? And then maybe that way you can navigate. So because this is very new, you can see the documents are just coming out. And even though I think your request is a very valid one, it's almost like, how can I apply this? But of course, we have to first tell you what's the new one. So then we can then say, okay, now we can apply it this way. So maybe there are opportunities for further sessions where we take case studies and then we actually apply the code of ethics to see how do we make sense out of that dilemmas.
Thanks, but that is exactly the challenge right now. Anyway, thank you.
So,
Okay. Thank you so much, Kaveh. I think it was a very, very insightful session and much needed for all the coaches here because Code of Ethics is something that they will be practicing day in, day out as a coach itself. And a new coach of ethics is something that will add on more. Thank you so much, Kaveh, and thank you everybody for joining in today. And what better to hear from ICF Board Director himself here. So thank you so much, Kaveh, again. And I've just dropped in all the CCU link. Please fill it up so that we don't have to share it again later because it's very, very big hassle to, backdate it. So please fill your forms and get the ethics CCU for today.
thank you.
And we will see you in the next webinar. Bye-bye. Bye, Kaveh. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aish, the topic of the webinar is saying coaching mastery.
Yes.
Okay.
It's per ICF itself. So
Okay.
they've said that all the webinars should be named as coaching mastery.
Oh.
And just the